Hello, everyone. This is the October 16th edition of Wednesday with Walton and Newberry here at the Cardinal Nation in video form, as well as in audio form at the Scoops Sports Network and all your favorite podcast apps. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the pitcher and player of the year in the Cardinal system, as well as players in the Arizona Fall League. And of course, joining me as always is scouting analyst Blake Newberry. Welcome, Blake.
Thank you, Brian. Good to be here.
So the Cardinals made their announcement of their pitcher and player of the year, and neither one was a surprise. I think they were both excellent choices. Certainly interested in your view as well. We'll start with the player of the year, Jimmy Crooks, who spent the entire year at Double-A Springfield. OPS of 908, which was the best in the system. 11 home runs, 19 doubles, 2 triples, 62 RBI. So, good power. Good production as well. And among all minor leaguers, he was second in average, second in on base, third in slugging, and then also in the top 10 in RBI, extra base hits, and home runs. So, it was a very balanced season for Jimmy Crooks offensively, but he also threw out about 33% of attempted base stealers. And as a result, he was the Texas League MVP and a postseason All-Star in the Texas League as named by Minor League Baseball. So a real nice season for Jimmy Crooks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Jimmy Crooks was really the only real choice the Cardinals had for this spot. I mean, he was far and away the best hitter in the system this year in most numbers, consistently finishing top 5 and pretty much any metric you want to look at, and doing so all while playing a premium defensive position and playing it well. I mean, it's hard to argue the impact that he had on both sides of the ball.
So we'll probably see Crooks at Memphis, I would think, starting the year. And then, it'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals do, not only with the catching position and the 3 players that they have, but also whether they get involved in the first base mix and designated hitter as well. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. It depends on what the Cardinals want to do this offseason, because obviously Jimmy Crooks is kind of blocked at the major league level if the Cardinals have Wilson Contreras, Ivan Herrera, and Pedro Pages all ahead of him. Obviously, injuries happen, but being 4th on the catching depth chart heading into a season doesn't typically equate to a lot of playing time. So there's, the chance that maybe Wilson Contreras gets a lot of run at DH, maybe some time at first base, maybe Ivan Herrera gets some time at first base. But I think without any subtractions to the group of 3 that are ahead of him, it's hard to see Jimmy Crooks really playing a lot in the majors, even if he continues to play the way that he has. He could force his way into the picture, but I don't really see the Cardinals taking anyone out of the picture during the season, unless like Pedro Pages is really struggling to hit, or Ivan Herrera's, issues with throwing runners out continues, or something like that.
And, Herrera still could be a trade candidate. Of course, it would be better, as you said, if he was on a higher note defensively right now. But, that could change going into the season as well. All right, so the pitcher of the year in the system, again, not a surprise by any stretch of the imagination. There's nobody who's been talked about more in the Cardinals system in 2024 than Quinn Mathews, who, of course, played at 4 different levels. And his major league leading strikeout total of 202 drew a lot of attention, as it should have. But he also, in addition to leading the system in strikeouts, was first in quality starts, second in innings pitched. I think only Michael McGreevy was ahead of him. Second in whip. So batting average against 179, 4-to-1, over 4-to-1 strikeout ratio. So, just a tremendous season for Quinn Mathews. He got a chance to pitch briefly at AAA at the end of the year. Do you think that's where he'll go back to start next year, Quinn Mathews?
Yeah, I think that's where he'll go back to. I think the Cardinals have at least 5 or 6 internal candidates to fill the rotation, regardless of whether or not Sonny Gray or Kyle Gibson or Lance Lynn are on the team next year. And I think the Cardinals are not going to want to rush Quinn Mathews. But with that said, he will be likely starting the year in AAA, which means he is just 1 promotion away. If he starts the season next year the way he started the season this year and just dominates AAA hitters in like 5 or 6 starts, I wouldn't be shocked if he was up pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, a fast start to the year. He was the Cardinals minor league pitcher of the month in both April and then in June. So twice in the same year. He was a pitching prospect of the year, according to minor league baseball, and the debut of the year, first team all minor league baseball, of course, postseason All-Star in the Texas League. And then Baseball America made Quinn Mathews their minor league pitcher of the year across all 30 organizations. So there wasn't much that Quinn Mathews wasn't recognized being in 2024. That's kind of a tough act to follow.
Yeah, I don't know how you can do any better than that, but I think he would settle for making a major league debut and earning the spot in the rotation. So hopefully that happens next year.
Yeah. All right, so that's the Player of the Year, Pitcher of the Year, and of course, our awards are still underway here at the Cardinal Nation. We're just now moving into our Players of the Year, the top hitters, after having done the relief pitchers and the starting pitchers, and we'll have a whole series of awards as well. Chances are good these two guys you'll hear about again when we announce our awards. But one of the things that we'll do when we do is provide a lot of stats on the other candidates as well, so you can kind of compare and decide if you agree or disagree with the choices. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about the Arizona Fall League. Of course, the Cardinals players are playing with the Glendale Desert Dogs, and they played 7 games now, or 5-2, coming off a really big win on Tuesday where they blasted Peoria 19-9. In that game, the main Cardinal to participate was Thomas Saggese, and he seems to be the Cardinals' priority player. He's played in 5 of the 7 games now. Saggese has primarily been either second baseman or designated hitter, batting second. In this most recent game, he went 3 for 5 with a double and also walked. So Saggese, very, very good in the early going, a 368 average, 1132 OPS. This is probably what the Cardinals hope to see from Thomas Saggese, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's encouraging to see Saggese hitting the way that he is, but it's also pretty much what we should have expected for a guy who's already reached the majors and is hitting against a lot of guys who are probably double A, high A, maybe some triple A arms in there. So he's definitely one of the more advanced players in the league, and we would expect to see him actually hit the ball the way that he is. I think one thing that's notable that kind of underlies the stats a little bit is Saggese is not really known for his power, his raw power specifically. He gets the in-game power because he's really good at pulling the ball in the air, but his raw power is only middling. I think his max exit velocity was like 108.4 miles per hour, hardest ball he hit all season, actually came in the majors, but that's frankly not that good of a maximum exit velocity for a major league hitter. In already in the Arizona Fall League, he is top that and I think he hit a ball 110.8 miles per hour. So he's already pushing up to 111. Whether that's because I haven't actually seen him, whether that's the case of like a mechanical tweak that unlock more power, or simply he just barreled the ball harder than he ever has. I don't know, but it's still encouraging to see at least some perhaps additional raw power in his game.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I'm certainly not going to argue with the exit velocity numbers you quoted because you know them well. But Saggese was only one of 2 players in the Cardinals system to hit 20 doubles and also hit 20 home runs this season. So, it isn't like he didn't do anything, in the International League this season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, his raw power isn't fantastic, but when you get out in front of the ball and hit it in the air, and a 400-foot home run counts the same, 380-foot home run counts the same as a 480-foot home run. So he does a really good job of finding gaps and elevating the ball, and that's really where a lot of his power comes from.
Catcher Leonardo Bernal is the youngest Cardinal who's in the Fall League. He was off to an 0-for-8 start before having 3 hits in Monday's game. So it's nice to see him, get going. It's still very early. He's only had 11 at bats so far, Bernal. But he had a very good year as he moved up into high A, threw out 34.5% of his attempted base stealers defensively. And he's a guy that we've talked a lot about over the time that has a lot of raw power potential. He had a career high 11 home runs this year, which was up from 3 in the past. But at only 20 years old, I guess there's still time for that power to fully show itself.
Yeah, I definitely think there is. And he's a guy who has really advanced to levels that are well above where you would expect somebody his age to be playing in. He struggled a little bit in Double A this year. And I mean, we're looking at the sample size of 50 plate appearances. So it's really not a whole lot, but he's been just a really impressive player throughout this, like every level he's reached, especially considering the age he's reached that level at, and the position that he plays is already demanding enough defensively, and to try to learn all the nuances of that while also, actually hitting at a well above league average level is already impressive. So he is probably a little bit less advanced, or maybe right around average for AFL players, as a guy who's has a full season of high A ball and just a little dab of Double A experience. So hopefully, he actually has a solid season. I don't expect him to hit like Thomas Saggese would this year, but it would still be nice to see him put up some good numbers.
Yeah. And the other position player the Cardinals have in the Arizona Fall League was a little bit of a surprise, Nathan Church. Interesting guy. It seems like you're always looking for left-handed bats, but yet the Cardinals have this predominance of left-handed hitting outfields, of which Church is. But kind of what's unique about him, he doesn't have a lot of power. He's a 4 for 13 all singles in the AFL so far. So he's batting 308, but a pretty low 665 OPS so far. But interesting, Church has always been a guy that's hit left-handed pitching well as a left-handed batter. Kind of interesting profile.
Yeah, it's always nice to see those guys. And Church is interesting because he's a guy who, to your point, as a left-handed hitter, has hit left-handed pitching well, and he can play center field, and he makes a ton of contact, and he has pretty decent speed on the base pass. Like,
And he makes he makes highlight plays defensively. It seemed like every week this year there'd be a video clip of him making some tremendous play, whether it was in left field or center or wherever he played.
yeah, exactly. Like he has just a lot of tools, and he started out the year really hot, kind of cooled off towards the end of the year, finished right around league average as a hitter in Double-A. So it would be nice to see him kind of tick back up in the AFL. But I think he's a guy who really shouldn't go underappreciated in the system, just considering how many things he's able to do at a pretty high level.
So on the pitching side, Cardinals have 5 pitchers in the fall league, and normally each organization, the 5 teams that make up an AFL roster, each of them get to designate one guy as a starting pitcher. The first time through the rotation, the Cardinals didn't have any starters. All 5 of their guys pitched in relief. The guy who pitched the longest in relief, Trent Baker, he's a guy that didn't start the season in the rotation with Springfield, but as the injuries occurred, he's a former starter when he was an A-ball, but as the injuries, with Hance and Roby and others, he ended up starting 14 games for Springfield. Didn't do very well for the first 2/3 of the season. He had an ERA at 6.66, but then something happened with Trent Baker, and he had an ERA under 3 over the last third of the season and really looked like an improved pitcher. What should we be expecting from Trent Baker?
I don't know. That's the thing. I think the Cardinals are setting him out there probably to maybe work on some things. And we'll see when we start to get some of the StatCast readings on some of his pitches, what he really has been working on. Because actually some of the other pitches they've sent out have made some notable changes to their arsenals already. And you can see it. And it's almost like the Cardinals have sent out these 5 pitchers specifically because they want them to work on specific parts of their game. So I'm really curious to actually see what becomes of Trent Baker in this AFL. And I know he's primarily been a sinker changeup guy in the past with a ton of arm side movement to it. So I'll be curious to see if maybe he has like a new breaking ball shape, which can miss more bats, because that's something he's not typically been great at in the past.
And, low 90s fastball, not going to be a guy that's going to ever blow anybody away, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Lefty Brycen Mautz had been a reliever in college. A lot of talk when he was drafted early on back in 2022 that would be his role. The Cardinals have had him starting, and Mautz was pretty successful in low A in 2023. But when he moved up to high A this year, he had a lot of trouble, especially with right-handed hitters. And, we've read a little bit about the Cardinals organization trying to get more innings out of their starters. That was something that they worked on in the minor leagues this year. Mautz fit that profile. He set a career high in innings pitched, but he also hit a career high in home runs given up, 20 home runs, all against right-handed batters. That's something that he's going to have to try to figure out, right?
Yeah, it is. And Mautz has always been a sinker slider guy. I think when the Cardinals drafted him, they were hoping to see more development from his changeup. He really did not show any development in his changeup in his first year in the system. It was frankly just not a good pitch when he was in single A, but it looked like he was tweaking that, especially in the second half of the season, especially in the last month of the season. You could actually see his strikeout rate tick up, and his changeup looks a little bit different. When we look at some of the StatCast readings on it, it's definitely a different pitch than it was when he was in single A. In the past, it's mirrored his sinker just simply too much. Like, it doesn't do anything because it's 6 miles per hour slower with like an extra 7 inches of drop. That's just not a great changeup profile. Now it's regularly getting 13 to 15 extra inches of drop when compared to his fastball, and an extra like 2 inches of arm side run. He's been able to tweak his grip enough to actually add significant depth to the changeup, and it looks like a whole different pitch now. So I think that's huge for him, specifically because it gives him a third pitch, which is something that he would need to continue starting. And it also gives him a pitch he can use to neutralize opposite-handed batters if he can command it well. So it's a little bit of a big development for Mautz, and I'm hoping to actually watch that pitch specifically in the AFL.
The Cardinal that had the longest stint so far pitching, Ixan Henderson, who we know is a favorite of yours, started off at Palm Beach, was exceptional, moved up to Peoria, still continued to pitch well, but not quite at the same level. He has allowed 1 earned run in 3 innings in the fall league on just a couple of hits. Henderson's, I guess, curveball slider kind of guy, really more than anything, right?
Yeah, he is. And he really likes to use his sinker and his four-seamer in there. The four-seamer is not really a distinct pitch from the sinker. It kind of blurs the two together, but it's almost like a sinker with riding life and good running life. And then he really likes to use the changeup, slider, and curveball as you mentioned. But the slider is weird because he really drops his arm slot by like 6 inches when he throws the slider relative to all of his other pitches, which you would obviously think is a cue, especially towards more advanced hitters as he starts to climb the ladder a little bit. So it's interesting to see that he's actually incorporated a cutter into his arsenal in the Arizona Fall League so far. And I'm especially curious to see what arm slot he's throwing that cutter out of. Because if he's mirroring the slider arm slot, all of a sudden now he has 2 pitches coming out of that arm slot instead of one, so it's not a dead giveaway. And those 2 pitches are both breaking glove side, but one's breaking an extra foot. So that could potentially be something that he uses to negate that a little bit. And it's also something that he could use to, actually get opposite-handed hitters out.
I was actually writing that down because I'll be down in the Fall League in a couple weeks, and I made a note to try to see if I can talk to Ixan about that very thing. He hit that delivery that he has is a little deceptive no matter what pitch he's throwing, but certainly, when he drops that arm slot on the slider.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one thing too I would love to see is if he can mirror the curveball arm slot with his slider, so it's all playing across the same plane and then everything's breaking differently. I think that works in his favor. I think the issue with that is that it could potentially change the movement profile of his slider, which already isn't that different from his curveball. And if those 2 pitches bleed together, all of a sudden they're going to lose effectiveness. So there might be good reason why he's dropping the arm slot on the slider. And now it's just going to be a question of, can he mask it enough to get away with it?
Now, our third lefty in a row, after Mautz and Henderson, is Alex Cornwell, who bounced back and forth. Mostly was at Springfield, spent some time at Memphis, has started, has relieved, hasn't been tremendously consistent. In fact, this year his walk rate really spiked, and that certainly hurt him. But Cornwell's down in the Fall League now, pitching in relief.
Yeah, I think the walk rate spike is definitely the problem with Cornwell this year because he's always been a guy who doesn't really rely on the quality of his stuff to like blow by hitters. He relies on his really like hard sinking four-seamer to get ground balls, and he relies on his ability to throw strikes to keep runners off the base paths. So it's kind of a fine line that he walks. He's very, batted ball results matter a ton to him. If all of a sudden he gets a little bit unlucky and a few more hits drop through, then he can get into rough outings. But that's compounded when he's walking like twice the hitters that he does typically. So if he can get that control and that command fixed and get his walk rates back down to where they've been in the past, I do think there's a chance he can make it to the majors as like a ground ball command control kind of guy.
And the top pitching prospect in the system currently in the Fall League is closer Matt Svanson from Springfield. Now, he hasn't been closing it for Glendale. He pitched in the 8th inning on Tuesday. Had a couple scoreless outings, though, so far. And, of course, a lot of folks know that he's a Texas League All-Star after saving 27 of 27. But he's not really a blow-him-away kind of guy, right? I mean, he sinker-slider type of guy. Didn't allow, by the way, in the Texas League, which is known for small ballparks and a lot of home runs, Matt Svanson didn't allow a home run all season long.
Yeah, and that's impressive enough. And he's definitely a sinker slider guy. And one of the limitations of that is both the sinker and the slider tend to show larger platoon splits than their other like pitch type counterparts. Like four seamers don't tend to show the same platoon splits as sinkers do. Sinkers are heavier, and curveballs tend to not show as large platoon splits as sliders. So when you have a guy who's throwing only a sinker and a slider, you tend to get the problem that Swanson's had, in which you can only get same-sided hitters out, and you really, really struggle against opposite-handed batters. And that was the case for Svanson this year. Right-handers OPS 633 against Svanson this year. For lefties, that figure rose to 940. So obviously a large issue with lefties. And one of the things that looks like he's trying to work on to combat that is, again, adding the cutter. It's a tried and true method for Cardinals pitchers. And it's a pitch that actually looks pretty solid for Svanson. He's sitting in the low 90s with it, getting about 2 inches of glove side cut. And it feels like it's a pitch that could really help him balance out his profile a little bit.
So there you have it. The Cardinals have, as we said, 8 players down in the Arizona Fall League. Again, we're still early, about a week and a half into the season. It'll, go for at least another month. And like I said, I'll be down there in a couple of weeks and hope to talk to all these players, as well as manager Ben Johnson, who manages the Glendale Desert Dogs. Normally during the season, he's with the Memphis Redbirds. So with that, we will close this edition of Wednesday with Walton and Newberry. Wanted to remind you that the Cardinal Nation Prospect Guide still for sale. I have in my hands the very last book. There's only one hard copy book left. The PDFs are, of course, available and will continue to be. But whoever places the next order will get the very last one. There won't be another set printed this year. And I think you'll find it's well worth your money with a wealth of information, not only about what the Cardinals did in the past, but also what we think they will do in the future. So make sure you get your copy. And with that, we will talk to you on October 22nd. Thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks again, Blake.